we're going to take a look at one more Excel what-if analysis tool. And the one that I want to demonstrate here is called the Scenario Manager. Now I want to build up the idea, the concept here before we jump in and see how this thing actually works. Open in front of you, I've got the example file that comes with this course, Excel 103 Advanced Exercises, and I'm currently on the Scenarios tab. Now, what I've got here is two simple little tables. The first one is some projected growth for various quarters over these different regions. I've got north, east, west, south for the 4 quarters and some totals here. Now, again, it's a simple little table. All that's happening here, the first quarter, these are just simple values. I'll click into one of those cells like C4 here, and I can see it's just a simple value up there in the formula bar. If I go to the East quarter 2, this one is a calculation. And it's a simple calculation. It's taking the previous quarter amount, multiplying it by C12, which is 2.3%, and then adding it back to the previous quarter. So we've just got a 2.3 predicted sales growth for quarter 2. And same with quarter 3. Same idea, just taking the previous quarter's amount, multiplying it by this predicted sales growth, and then adding it back in to get our next quarter's amount. So simple little table there. And this little predicted sales growth table down below are these different scenarios. You know, we're going to have a predicted sales growth of 3.3% for the north, just blanket across the board. Oh, for east, we're going to do 2.3 every quarter, and so on. Now, this tool that I want to demonstrate here, the Scenario Manager, once again falls into this category of what-if analysis, is going to allow us to create and save multiple scenarios. For example, I want to have a best case scenario. Now, what happens in the best case? How far up do we go in this predicted sales growth? Maybe north becomes 5%, east becomes 8%, west becomes 6%, and so on. Well, I also want to have perhaps a worst case scenario. Well, do we go negative? Do we have 1% across the board? Do we have 0%? Right? What's the worst case here? And perhaps I want to have some other scenarios. Well, in order for me to do that right now, just as is within Excel, I'd sit here and adjust these numbers. Like if I change the 3.3% to, let's say 5%, I'll hit my enter key here. I've now updated that predicted sales growth for north, but now all of my north values have updated. They're all now being multiplied by a 5% predicted sales growth. Now I want to show off a worst case. Well, now I got to get back in there and adjust the value. Let's go down to 1% or whatever. So it's kind of just a game of me updating this single table here. Or maybe I'm going to undo this, Control Z. Let's get that back to the 3.3% there. So I could also perhaps create other worksheets, just duplicating this and changing the values there, and then having a worksheet for best case and a worksheet for worst case and a worksheet for different cases, different scenarios. Well, that would be one way for us to do it. But I want to show off this tool here. This Scenario Manager allows you to use one worksheet and then save off different scenarios that you can just toggle through. Take a look. This is how it works. So my first step, I'm going to select the values that are going to change, that I'm going to change through the different scenarios, best case, worst case, and so on. So I'm going to select C11 to C14. I'm then going to go up to my Data tab. I'm going to go to What If Analysis, and I'm going to go into Scenario Manager. Now I currently have no scenarios in there, none defined. So I'm going to go ahead and add one. We'll call this, we'll call it default. I'm going to create one scenario here, default scenario. That's just going to be left as is. Just this 3.3, 2.3, 4.3, and 1.1% for the different regions. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to hit OK again, not changing anything, just boop, I've got a default scenario. All right, let's create another one here. So I'll go back to Add, and let's call this best case scenario. And I'm going to be changing cells C11 to C14. I could put an additional comment here this is best case, yada, yada, yada. Put some description in there about why this is best case and so on. I'll go ahead and hit OK. And now I get to make my changes. And this 4 little values represent those 4 cells that I originally highlighted. So this is my best case, and I'm going to make up some numbers here. There's definitely more thought that goes into this process. Perhaps we're going to have a meeting where you sit down with other forecasters in the office and come up with these scenarios. And, what if we cut forces here? What happens to this production plant? What if we increase our production output here? What happens to our forecast and so on? So there's a lot more thought that goes into this, but the tool itself is just a way for us to store off and save these various scenarios. So I'm going to make up some numbers here. We'll say north goes to 5, east goes to 8, west will go to 6.5, and south will go to 3. So I'll hit OK, and I've now got my best case. Now let's create one more just for fun. Let's call this one worst case. I guess worst case would be, we're shutting down. Oops, let's make sure we spell this right. We're shutting down. Everybody's going home, but let's make something up here. Let's put them all down to 1. We'll make it really simple just for the demonstration. All right, so now I've got my 3 scenarios here. And notice in the background, I've still got my original set of values there. Well, what I can do now with my scenario window open, Scenario Manager, remember I got this from Data, What If Analysis, and Scenario Manager. I can now select one, like my best case, and I'll go show it. And so now I've updated my numbers here, which are reflected in the calculations. I'll go to worst case, and I'll show it. So now they're all 1%, and my calculations have updated. And I've got my default in there. Show. So a very quick, very robust tool where we can save off these values and treat them as different scenarios and just toggling between them. No longer am I creating multiple worksheets to be able to show off these different scenarios, okay, or just manually overwriting stuff to change the values, but I've just got them all saved right here that I can just toggle between. Try it out. Open up the exercise file, hop over to the Scenarios tab, and build some of your own scenarios. Worst case, best case, whatever you want to call them. Create some numbers here, save them off as a scenario, and confirm that they work. Try showing them.